us now from Washington is Behnam Ben Taleblu, senior analyst at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. And Behnam, thanks for coming back. Well, first of all, let's take a look at this announcement by Iran. We saw that fire at Natanz. We're not quite sure how much damage it did, but it does appear to have done some significant damage. Any guess how long it would take them to not only reach the capacity that they had, but according to this announcement, it looks like they're really just trying to surpass the previous capacity?
Well, great to be with you, Kalev. I think those are excellent questions because the Iranians are trying to cover their bases on multiple fronts here. At home, they know that they've lost significant face. It's likely that some of these explosions were acts of foreign sabotage. And Iran is trying to say its most sensitive facilities, the facilities it's invested so much time, so much money, and squandered so many national resources for, are not actually so easily penetrable and so easily destroyable. So Iran has said construction has begun on a much bigger, badder facility, if you will. But there were public reports about the previous site that said that the explosion set it back by about 1 to 2 years for centrifuge production. If this site is really going to be bigger, I would expect the timeline to be about a year to a year and a half for construction, then operations, and then phasing in new and more advanced centrifuges. So pretty much the same estimate given construction, as well as phasing in new centrifuges.
Right. I found it quite interesting, another comment in the statement from Iran. Of course, I'm reading from translation that they were building this in the heart of the mountains. I take it maybe not only just the geographical location, maybe we're talking about an underground facility. Maybe they're anticipating possible airstrikes there, and they're setting the ground, preparing for that?
Yeah, the Iranians are telling you with their actions rather than their words what their longer-term intentions here are. If this was a purely peaceful facility, if they weren't concerned about the way the world was looking at the direction of the nuclear program, this would be stuff to have above ground in a much more safer, controlled environment. But what you saw with the Iranians near the holy city of Qom in Fordo, when they had an enrichment facility buried deep, deep, deep underground, and the U.S. and other countries had to tout bunker-busting bomb potential to say that these sites were actually not as impregnable as previously thought, this is the Iranians really tipping their hands here. They know that this is part of their larger nuclear supply program. And so they're trying to cover it up and bury it as much as possible. And that is both literal and figurative.
Right. And now let's put it more in the sort of the bigger context of what's going on in Iran. We know the economy is suffering from really a double whammy, both the impact of the sanctions, the coronavirus pandemic, which is apparently or reportedly much more severe than the official statistics that the government has been putting out. And yet, how much does that impact, or not at all, the capacity of Iran both to invest in this, and also we should mention some of its other weapons programs, for example, the ballistic missile program that has also been an issue of concern, both certainly for Israel, but really for the international community?
Well, these national security areas for Iran, be it the nuclear area, the missile area, are key priorities, and the Iranian government appears willing and able to kind of constrain its budget and devote more resources away from less critical programs in its own eyes towards some of these programs. And that means that Tehran is continuously putting regime interest over national interest. It's continuously putting literal bombs over the butter or the needs of its own people. And this is a highly combustible situation, as you mentioned, with the macroeconomic contraction, coupled, of course, with the coronavirus, coupled, of course, with really several own goals by Iran in 2020 that have led some to conclude that Iran is really in a defeat loop in 2020. Fears are, of course, that something that which may reverse this defeat loop is if there's a new U.S. administration that chooses to relieve pressure rather than adding pressure, as the Trump administration has been doing.
Right, and certainly that could be a big factor. We will just have to see how that plays out. Behnam Ben Taleblu from the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, thank you for joining us again on The Rundown.